Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister what the Scottish Government's permission is on the impact in Scotland of the planned UK reductions to housing benefits for vulnerable people who stay in supported and women's aid refuge accommodation.
First Minister.
The UK Government proposed to set the housing element of benefit claims to local housing allowance levels, as this is lower than the costs of rent and service charges in refuges and supported accommodation. This will have a catastrophic impact in some of the most vulnerable people in our society who rely on such support for survival, and that does include women fleeing domestic abuse, disabled people, older people and some homeless people. The Scottish Government is concerned about these proposals, which were outlined in the UK Government spending review. The Social Justice Secretary has written to the UK Minister for Welfare Reform to express our grave concerns and to seek urgent clarification on what protection will be provided for those in supported accommodation.
Clare Adamson.
Thank the First Minister for her answer. Does the First Minister agree that the only way to stop both tenants and providers from the worry and distress being caused by these proposals is if the UK Government make clear now that refuge and supported accommodation will be totally exempt from the local housing allowance cap?
First Minister.
Yes, I do agree with that. Tenants, I think, urgently need to be reassured that their accommodation will be exempt from the local housing allowance rate so that they don't need to worry about their future. Providers of supported accommodation and refuge accommodation also need to have the security to know that they can continue to provide essential services and be able to plan for the future. The UK Government's proposals mean that there is now real uncertainty about the future provision of refuge and other forms of supported accommodation, not just in Scotland, I have to say, but across the UK, despite an earlier announcement that changes to funding arrangements would be cost neutral. UK ministers can put an end to this worry now, and I call on them to immediately announce an exemption for refuge and supported accommodation from the local housing allowance cap.